Okay, so I'm going to digress from the slides and talk about something we're going to use later, probably more than we ever did last year. So, anyone know what this is called? There's a name for this. Yes, it's a spreadsheet. Anyone know? Who said that? Oh, yeah. Man, I was impressed there for a second. It's called a decision matrix. Okay, it's something that I was, easy, okay?
I got proud of myself.
You should have been. You should actually remembered something from last year. So, a decision matrix is something that I became familiarized with during an Army school, Combined Armed Services Staff School at Fort Leavenworth. And this is used, the same technique, in a little bit more sophisticated manner, but the same exact technique is what our military planners use 90% of the time when they're trying to evaluate different options. And the way we use it as staff officers is, as an example, if you have 3 courses of attack, 3 options for attacking an enemy. Maybe it's an envelopment, maybe it's a direct frontal attack, maybe it's an indirect pincer. Okay? You would put those as those 3 options. And then across the top we have decision-making criteria. You have screening criteria, which would not show up at this point. Screening criteria would be if you have any more than 30% casualties, then it's not acceptable. Okay, so you eliminate that course of action because that course of action plays out to estimated 50% casualties. Okay, so I use this exact same thing when I'm making recommendations to my clients, but I always use the same 4 decision-making criteria. Because you can look at any addition that you make to a network, any addition you make to a business, and in IT, and you can pretty much categorize that decision by those 4 decision-making criteria, evaluative criteria we call it. Cost, something you're going to buy is going to cost something. And if I buy a $10,000 Cisco router, the cost compared to a $35 Netgear or Linksys router that I buy at Walmart, clearly the Walmart router from a cost standpoint is better or worse? The Walmart router. Better, okay? At least initial cost. And so the only change that I'll make is I may change the cost to overall cost, and then in a separate spreadsheet I identify, okay, so if I put in that Netgear router or that Linksys router, the initial cost up front may be high or maybe very, very low and good, but the cost to the business because of security risks, or the cost to the business because I have to constantly modify it and change it and configure it, may not be so good. Okay, but at any rate, what I'll do is I'll evaluate the 4 criteria, the 4 options based on. Actually, this should be 1 to 5. You could use that. You could use 1 to 5 as worst to best. Okay, so let's say we're going to buy a router or buy a firewall. Okay, since we're talking about security, we're talking about packets. Let's talk about that. Okay, so option 1, give me a cheap firewall. Anyone have a cheap firewall at home? Give me the model of Austin.
Oh, never mind. I was going with software.
Give me okay. No, that's all right.
Software.
Yeah.
You can get free software for it's not great.
AVG software. I can use that as a firewall. Give me a cheap firewall appliance. Yes.
I was going to say Norton 360.
I'm sorry?
Norton 360.
That's software, but it's not Norton 360. Still software. Okay?
Adware antivirus, that's still software.
You guys keep talking about software. Let me do a Linksys. A Linksys Walmart special. Okay? And then the last one is a Cisco 501. 501, 510, 550. Oops. Okay? So, if I'm going to evaluate those, AVG software, which is free from a cost, clearly that's the best. Norton 360 software, what is it? How much is it?
It's cheap, I don't know the exact.
50 bucks?
Yeah, I think something around there.
20 bucks, so it's almost free, so let's give it a 4. Linksys Walmart special is probably what, 50 bucks? So we'll give it a 3, right? A Cisco 550 is several $100s. Compared to the others, that's a 1. Okay? Performance, AVG software. I mean, maybe it's 6, 1/2 dozen the other for AVG and Norton, so we'll give them, from a performance standpoint, they're on each one of the workstations. So we'll give them a, let's say, 2. Walmart special, I don't have any firewall on the workstation, so compared to the software-based versions of the firewall, this is going to be fast. But compared to the Cisco, it's not going to be fast. So we'll give that a 4. And the Cisco is the best, so we'll give it a 5, because it's going to be performance from a hardware appliance standpoint, plus there's nothing being loaded on the workstations. Availability. Who knows what I mean by availability? Austin?
Like where you might have to purchase it. If you-
Nope. Caitlin? How reliable? Maybe I should say reliability in this particular case. Let's call it that. Reliability. AVG software. Do I have tech support on it? I would do my research to find out, and since I have to install it on every single workstation, and there's no tech support most likely, I would probably give that the worst on availability. Norton 360, probably tech support, right? But I still have to load it on every workstation. So if a couple workstations go down or it gets corrupted, they're not going to be available on a regular basis. So I'll give that a 2. Linksys Walmart special, tech support, but I don't have redundant power supplies, right? I don't have I don't have automatic downloads for firmware, those kinds of things, but it's still better than software. A Cisco 550, redundant power supplies, free tech support from Cisco, that's going to be a 5. Security, this is easy. It's going to follow the same as the reliability, most likely. 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay? So, given that, which is our best choice?
Cisco.
The Cisco 550. But here's where this breaks down. If this is for home use, right? If this is for home use, the Cisco 550, unless I'm running a gaming server that I'm making a bunch of money off of, maybe it's worth the investment, right? When I evaluate all these options, I need to take into consideration the application. If it's home for my parents and my siblings, the Cisco 550 is way overkill. And so when it gets to screening criteria, before I even put those 4 up there, because the Cisco 550, I know it's several $100s, I would never buy something like, well, I would. But normally I would never recommend this to a home user who doesn't have a bunch of servers that they're trying to advertise. I would eliminate that in screening criteria and just look at the top 3, if those are the top 3 best choices. Okay? But if I've got a web server, if I've got a gaming server that I'm trying to make money off of, then I would include it, and it might definitely be worth it. And here's the other thing: if I have a server that I am absolutely has to stay up 7 by 24 because I've got a service level agreement with all these paying customers, then reliability and security are going to be weighted maybe 1.5 times the others. And so I would put another row in there called weighting, W-E-I-G-H-T-I-N-G, weighting, that would say, if I give it a 5 and I've got it a 1.5 weight, then that means it's 5 times 1.5. You follow? So it's going to be 7.5. Yes?
Say that you have a server and you guys like restart it. Would you do like just put another server onto that server for that? I don't know.
Failover? So that it's never down?
Yeah.
So Austin's question is, if you have a server that has to be up over and over and over again, you know you're going to have to reboot it. At some point you have to do the Windows updates, you have to do a fix, you install new software, you remove software, and those usually call for reboots. How would you account for that? And the answer is, you would have some sort of situation where you have what we call failover, where another one is just kicks in right away. Okay, there's a choice. I've got a gaming server that, if I'm down, let's say I estimate it's going to cost me $5 per minute that I'm down. Great example, great example. I've got a gaming server that's going to cost me $5 per minute if it's down. When I start looking at this criteria, how much would it cost to implement a redundant solution? Redundant, who knows what I mean by redundant? No? Nobody knows what I mean by redundant? Brittany, what's redundant mean? What's that?
Repetitive.
What'd you say?
Repetitive.
Kind of. In a server, what would it be?
You don't need it.
A what?
You wouldn't need it.
Well, no, redundant would be Austin.
Redundancy is like having, like with the mesh topology, okay, it's...
You have redundant network connections.
Yeah,
A redundant server would be a second server just sitting there
it's doing the, that would either
doing the
be-
exact same thing in case this one goes down. Okay? So I look at the cost of that, and $5 per minute, is it worth it? And I do an evaluation matrix or a decision matrix. Is it worth it to pay $5,000 or whatever to buy that hardware plus? Well, if it's going to be rebooted on a regular basis, then it's worth it. At $5 per minute, probably not. At $150 per minute, now we're starting to look at, during the course of the year, how many times am I going to have to reboot this? How much time is it going to be down? So on and so forth. Those are the kinds of decisions that we as IT professionals make. Now, we as local network administrators many times aren't even asked to do this type of evaluative criteria. This is the difference, this kind of, and this is obviously a very simplified version of what we do, but this type of evaluation is the difference between making $20 an hour as a moves, adds, and changes, break, fix kind of guy. I'm going to fix your printer, I'm going to load cartridges in it, I'm going to load an operating system on your computer, versus a professional IT consultant, which I'm trying to get you guys to do, at $150 an hour. If you can make these kinds of recommendations that are good recommendations, accurate recommendations on whether or not you buy this, whether or not you virtualize using VMware versus Microsoft virtualization, those kinds of things, if you can make those good recommendations, then you'll bring in the good bucks. But you're not going to be able to do that unless you get the certifications and prove that you've got credibility, unless you get some experience, so on and so forth. So it's definitely the possibility, but there are things that you have to accomplish before you do that. One of the things you're going to see next Thursday, what time is it? We've got just a couple minutes. Next Thursday, if you haven't seen it, we are definitely going to Mossberg. We will leave promptly at 8 o'clock. Look at the agenda on OneNote. We will be back at Plymouth High School at 11:30. Make sure that I have something from the schools other than Plymouth saying that you can go on this field trip. If like in the example of Triton, if Karen Worsham emails me and says everybody is covered, they don't need parental whatever, that's adequate, or Bremen or whoever, but I need something saying that you're authorized to do it. You're going to be late for your classes, of course, when you get back. You're going to be late. Any questions? Turn that off, please. Yes.